Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take those really complex, sometimes tough topics and break them down into insights that can actually empower you. Today, we're diving into something incredibly important, but often really misunderstood. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, C-PTSD for short. And our guide for this is the amazing work of Pete Walker, especially his book, Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. Our mission really is to give you a clear path to understanding this, maybe uncover some surprising things, those aha moments that, could shed light on your own life or maybe someone you care about.
Yeah, and this material, it's honestly life-changing for so many. We hear from people all the time who say reading Pete Walker felt like he just sort of unzipped them, like he stepped right inside that traumatized part of themselves. For a lot of folks, it's that final piece of the puzzle they've been searching for. It brings this incredible sense of empowerment, liberation, really. We really want to help you feel seen, feel understood by digging into these insights.
Okay, so let's jump right in that. We all kind of know about PTSD, right? But what exactly is CPTSD? How is it different? What makes it complex?
Right. Well, what really sets CPTSD apart, and Pete Walker nails this, is its severity and how it shows up. It's a much more pervasive kind of trauma response. You can think of it as having 5 key features, and these can be really troublesome. There are emotional flashbacks, toxic shame, self-abandonment, that really harsh inner critic, and chronic social anxiety. But maybe the most characteristic thing, the most disorienting, that's the emotional flashbacks.
Emotional flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, how are those different from, say, the flashbacks we usually associate with PTSD?
That's a great question. So traditional PTSD flashbacks often have strong visual parts, right? Like a soldier reliving a battle scene. CPTSD flashbacks, they often don't have that visual piece. Instead, they're these sudden, often long regressions back to overwhelming feelings from childhood. Imagine just being slammed by this wave of intense fear or shame, alienation, rage, grief, even deep depression. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. And these feeling states, they can be subtle, like a background hum of dread or just absolutely horrific, all-consuming. And they can last moments or hours, sometimes even weeks. It's like your past emotional state completely hijacks your present.
Wow. It's incredibly vivid. So think about this if you're listening. Have you ever had that sudden, intense rush of feeling, maybe overpowering fear or shame that just felt way out of proportion to whatever was happening right then? Almost like an emotional time warp?
Yeah.
That description, the flashback without the picture, just the feeling, that's often a huge aha moment for people, right? Finally naming that confusing inner experience.
Exactly. Understanding that is so key. And when we look at where CPTSD comes from, yes, of course, extended physical or sexual abuse in childhood are definite causes, profound ones. But Pete Walker's work really highlights something else, something maybe even more common: ongoing verbal and emotional abuse and neglect. He argues these are just as damaging, maybe even more prevalent in causing CPTSD.
Ongoing verbal and emotional abuse.
Yeah.
So not just single events, but the whole environment.
Precisely. He talks about contempt as being particularly toxic. It's this awful mix of like verbal put-downs, rage, disgust, aimed at a child over and over. It basically forces the child to just give up on trying to connect or get help. They learn it's useless or even dangerous. They internalize this message that they're fundamentally flawed, disgusting even, and that leads to this deep sense of abandonment and what we call learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Yeah. Think about the examples he gives. They're brutal. A father who repeatedly attacked and looked at him with disgust.
Yeah.
Or an older sibling saying, "I can't stand sight of you. You make me want to vomit." These aren't just bad moments. It's the air the child breathes. It shapes their whole sense of self, their safety in the world.
This leads to something else you mentioned, misdiagnosis, which sounds like a massive problem here.
Oh, it's huge. John Briere, a really respected traumatologist, quipped that if CPTSD were properly recognized, the DSM, the big book of mental disorders, would basically shrink to a pamphlet.
Wow. That really says something, doesn't it? So people are getting diagnosed with what? Instead of CPTSD?
All sorts of things. Various anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, sometimes narcissistic or borderline personality disorders, codependency, even things on the autistic spectrum. And Walker adds another layer. He suggests that sometimes ADHD or OCD could be seen as fixated flight responses to trauma, and maybe ADD or certain depressive or dissociative states as fixated freeze responses.
So the diagnosis they get might describe a symptom, but it misses the root cause.
Exactly. And these labels, sometimes they might coexist, sure, but often they're just incomplete. And frankly, they can be really shaming. Think about it. Calling CPTSD just panic disorder is like, well, it's like saying someone with a severe food allergy just has chronically itchy eyes.
Right, you're treating the itch but ignoring the allergy itself.
Precisely. You're treating a surface symptom without getting to the core trauma. And so people cycle through treatments that don't work. They feel more misunderstood, more alone. The real aha is that when you recognize the trauma is the root, it changes the whole approach to healing. It makes sense of all the symptoms.
That analogy really drives it home. Okay, so if kids are growing up in these incredibly difficult, sometimes horrific environments, how do they cope? How do they even survive that?
Well, they develop survival strategies. Pete Walker calls them the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. His idea is that kids in trauma situations tend to lean heavily on one of these patterns. It helps them get through an unbearable childhood.
Okay, the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, survival strategies.
Yes. But here's the catch. Those strategies, so necessary back then, get kind of baked in. They become these rigid defensive structures in adulthood, and that limits their ability to respond flexibly to life later on. They get stuck in that old survival mode.
Stuck in survival mode. Okay, can you walk us through each of those 4 Fs, maybe with some examples?
Absolutely. Let's start with the fight type. This is often linked to what we might call a narcissistic defense. These individuals learned early that the way to deal with feeling abandoned or threatened is with anger. They might use contempt, just like what was used on them, to intimidate others, to control situations. Walker uses the example of Bob. He was the golden child, the hero. But his parents' perfectionism molded him into this full-fledged narcissist and control freak. He even helped them scapegoat his sister, Carol. His anger, his need for control, that was his shield. But it also kept him isolated.
Okay, so fight is about control and anger as defense. What about flight?
The flight type often develops an obsessive-compulsive defense. These are the people who stay constantly busy, always achieving, always striving. Why? To avoid feeling the inner pain, the abandonment, they might obsessively work or try to perfect themselves, thinking, if I'm perfect, I'll be safe, I'll be loved. Carol, Bob's sister, is the example here. As the family scapegoat, her intense anxiety turned into this obsessive-compulsive approach to schoolwork. Later, it became life-spoiling perfectionism and workaholism.
Workaholism is a flight response.
And there's this really chilling detail from a home video where, as a little girl, she's hitting herself, calling herself a bad girl while her parents are laughing. Walker links this early self-attack to later suicidal thoughts. He calls this left brain dissociation. It's using constant thinking, planning, worrying, like running on a hamster wheel in your head to distract from the raw emotional pain underneath, a mental escape.
That's heartbreaking. Okay, so fight, flight, was it freeze?
The freeze type, this is more of a dissociative defense. These individuals react to threat by shutting down, disappearing, hiding, isolating, avoiding contact. They can become the lost child in the family. Maud is the example. She was born after her parents were kind of worn out from dealing with Bob and Carol, so she just slipped deeper into dissociation. Walker calls this right brain dissociation. It's disconnecting from feelings, from the body, maybe feeling unreal or numb, anything to avoid the pain and the risk of interacting with others.
Shutting down, disappearing. And the last one, fawn.
Right, the fawn type. This is that survival through appeasement. It's often linked to codependency. These individuals learn that safety comes from merging with others' wishes and demands. They become hyper-attuned to what others need, sacrificing their own needs, their own self, in the process. Sean is the example. He had this natural gift for compassion, but he learned to use it to anticipate his mother's moods, almost clairvoyantly, to calm her down and earn tiny morsels of her approval. This pattern, essential for surviving her moods, means later in life they struggle massively with saying no, setting boundaries, even knowing what they themselves want. They lose themselves trying to please everyone else.
Wow, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It really reframes so many behaviors, doesn't it?
Gee.
You see them not as personality flaws, but as ingenious survival skills that just outlive their usefulness. For everyone listening, do any of those descriptions ring a bell? Maybe in yourself or someone you know. Recognizing your main F-type can be such a game changer, right? Just understanding why you react the way you do.
Absolutely. And it's important to add, most people are actually trauma hybrids. They might have a primary F-type, but also a backup they switch to. Knowing your specific pattern, your primary and secondary response, that gives you a personalized map for healing. It tells you which defenses you need to work on softening.
A personalized map. I like that. It feels empowering, not just like a label. Okay, so we understand the problem, the survival strategies. But the crucial part, healing. You said there's a path forward. Where do we even begin?
Well, the first thing to know is that healing from C-PTSD isn't quick, and it isn't linear. It's complex, it takes many approaches, and honestly, it's often a lifelong journey. There will be progress and setbacks. It vacillates. Walker is clear. No quick fixes. It's a deep process, but generally it moves through stages. Usually starts with understanding like what we're doing now, psychoeducation, mindfulness. Then comes the emotional work, especially grieving. Then healing the body, the somatic piece.
Yeah.
And finally, repairing relationships. It's layered.
Layered. Okay, let's focus on one layer that seems huge for so many. That inner critic. You called it the shaming internalized parents. That sounds intense. It's not just self-doubt, is it?
Oh, far from it. This critic is relentless. It attacks with perfectionism, black and white thinking, deep self-hate, micromanaging everything you do, overwhelming guilt, constant shoulds. It can push you into overproductivity to prove you're worthy, call you names, even convince you you're in danger when you're not. Walker mentions a client, Dimitri, who'd get triggered and just spiral into self-attack, world-class spaz, listing all his perceived flaws and then canceling plans, isolating himself. The critic just steals your life.
So how do you fight something like that, something so deeply ingrained?
It takes practice, lots of it. Walker suggests practical tools. One is thought stopping, literally forcefully telling that critic no or shut up when it starts its tirade, interrupting the pattern. Another is thought substitution and thought correction. This means consciously replacing the critic's lies with truth. Maybe a list you've prepared of your good qualities, your accomplishments, or using positive visualization. Walker has this great line, thoughts, just mere thoughts, are as powerful as electric batteries, as good for you as sunlight is, or as bad for you as poison. But he's realistic. He says this takes thousands of angry skirmishes over time. It's a persistent, conscious effort, a marathon.
Thousands of skirmishes. That really emphasizes the commitment needed. Okay, so fighting the critic is one front. What about those emotional flashbacks you mentioned earlier? They sound so disorienting. How do you handle being hijacked like that?
Yeah, they can feel terrifying. The key is first recognizing when it's happening. Recognizing, okay, this feeling is intense. It feels old. This might be a flashback. Pete Walker himself had a breakthrough, realizing his stage fright about teaching wasn't just nerves, it was a flashback to how dangerous it felt to speak up at his family dinner table as a kid.
Wow, connecting the present feeling to the past danger.
Exactly, and that insight helped him develop tools. He actually created the 13 steps for managing flashbacks. It's a list people literally carry with them. Some key steps are things like grounding, reminding yourself firmly, I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. I am safe now, here in the present. You might look around, feel your feet, name objects you see. Also self-talk, speaking kindly, reassuringly to your inner child part, acknowledging the fear, but stating your adult presence and safety. It's also crucial to fight the critic's tendency to catastrophize during a flashback, the part that says, this will never end, I'm broken. And importantly, allowing space for grieving, letting those old feelings, the fear, the hurt, the abandonment actually move through you instead of staying stuck. Seeking support from safe people is vital too, and reminding yourself, I'm in an adult body now. I have resources, skills, allies I never had as a child.
Sounds like allowing grief is actually a core part of managing flashbacks and healing in general, which seems counterintuitive, right? We usually try to avoid grief.
We do. But Walker argues that embracing grief is essential for reclaiming our emotional intelligence. We buried those feelings to survive, but we also buried parts of ourselves. Grieving, in his model, has two main parts, angering and crying. Angering isn't about destructive rage, it's about mobilizing that life force, that righteous anger about past wrongs, and channeling it into self-protection now, setting boundaries, saying, no more.
Using anger constructively.
Yes. And then there's crying. Walker calls it the penultimate soothing. It's the release valve for fear, shame, depression. He mentions that client, Kylie, who fainted as a kid because she was too scared to cry in front of her mother. When she finally cried in therapy decades later, it was huge. Or that email from the male client, I've cried more than the past couple of decades. I'm actually opening up to life. There's something else, something quite beautiful. That's the power of allowing those tears.
Beautiful, yeah.
And he talks about verbal ventilation, learning to talk about your feelings while you're feeling them. It helps integrate the thinking brain and the feeling brain so you're not just overwhelmed by emotion or cut off from it. It's key for intimacy, too.
Thinking and feeling at the same time. That makes so much sense. Okay, so we've talked about mind emotions. What about the body? You mentioned somatic healing. How does trauma live in the body, and how do we heal it there?
Oh, the body keeps the score. Absolutely. Chronic trauma locks us into hyperarousal, that constant fight-or-flight readiness, and that does physical damage over time. We see hypervigilance, shallow breathing, muscles constantly tight, what Wilhelm Reich called armoring digestive issues. The list goes on. Pete Walker shares his own struggle with body armoring, how much he initially resisted things like stretching, but through years of practicing somatic mindfulness, he found it really reduced his anxiety, helped him feel safer in his body. So practical things include gentle stretching, yoga, somatic mindfulness, just bringing curious awareness to physical sensations without judgment. Sometimes specific therapies focusing on the body. He also mentions a simple AA acronym, HLLT. Ask yourself, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Sometimes what feels like a massive emotional crisis is actually rooted in unmet basic needs. Addressing the body is absolutely crucial.
HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That's a great practical check-in. Well, okay, this is all tying together mind, emotion, body. But CPTSD starts with broken connection, right, and attachment disorder. So relational healing must be central too. How do you even start building safe connections when your past taught you people aren't safe?
That is the core challenge, isn't it? Growing up without a safe adult to bond with makes trusting and connecting as an adult incredibly hard. So finding good enough relational help is vital. And that help can come from surprising places. Pets, Walker notes, can offer incredible, unconditional positive regard, like his dog, George. Books, too, bibliotherapy. Finding resonance and guidance in words, like he did with Walt Whitman, or like his client Alice found. A community of books.
So connection doesn't always have to be human initially.
Not necessarily. But eventually, safe human connection is key. Therapists, supportive partners, good friends. Finding these can feel like a miracle, especially later in recovery. Sometimes, though, healing requires distance from the original source of harm. Walker talks about the need for a parentectomy, in some cases reducing or cutting contact with toxic parents. He gives the example of Joe, misdiagnosed as schizoid, who only started making real progress after limiting calls with his emasculating mother. It created space to heal.
A parentectomy. That's a strong term, but it highlights how crucial boundaries can be.
Absolutely. And then there's the internal work of reparenting. This involves self-mothering, offering yourself the compassion, acceptance, and unconditional love you didn't get, really nurturing that inner child. And self-fathering, developing assertiveness, self-protection. He suggests things like the time machine rescue operation, imagining going back and protecting your younger self. It's about giving yourself what you needed.
Reparenting yourself.
Yes, and you don't have to do it alone. There's reparenting by committee, building a circle of safe, supportive people, your chosen family, who collectively offer that good enough support. He tells the story of Frank, a freeze-fawn type. Frank took the risk of being vulnerable with his girlfriend. She responded with empathy, and that safe connection deepened their intimacy and ultimately helped him heal to the point he didn't need therapy anymore. That's the power of earned, secure attachment.
Wow. That's incredibly hopeful. It really shows the potential for transformation through connection.
Yeah.
So, okay, people do this incredibly brave, hard work. They face the critic, the flashbacks, the grief. They work on their body. They risk connection. What does life look like on the other side? What does thriving actually mean after CPTSD?
Well, it's not about suddenly becoming problem-free or always happy. It's still a lifelong process, remember, with ups and downs, but there are definite silver linings. Effective recovery often leads to an emotional intelligence far beyond the norm. Because survivors have had to consciously work on understanding emotions, their own and others, they often develop a depth that many people kind of skim over in regular society. They evolve out of the emotional impoverishment of the mainstream. One client joked they become super normal. I make the normies look like they're the ones with C-PTSD.
Huh. Super normal. I like that.
It's tongue-in-cheek, but it points to a richer inner life. More freedom to choose your own path, follow your own values, Campbell's follow your bliss, and a much greater capacity for deep, authentic intimacy. Because when you can show your whole self, flaws and all, and be met with acceptance, feelings of love, appreciation, and gratitude are naturally enhanced.
That sounds like true connection. And it also sounds like it flies in the face of that constant pressure we feel to just be happy all the time.
It really does. Recovery helps you see through that pressure, the mainstream media's indoctrination that people should be happy all the time. You resist that emotional imperialism of, don't worry, be happy, right? Instead, you develop real emotional flexibility. You learn to accept the whole spectrum, the ebb and flow of being human. Happy, sad, angry, scared, even bored. You're not chasing some bland, numb middle ground. David Mitchell's quote captures it. Good moods are as fragile as eggs, and bad moods as fragile as bricks. You accept the bricks along with the eggs. And paradoxically, that acceptance is what allows genuine gratitude to arise more often. For Walker, that feeling returns and deeply moves my soul. It's about living authentically, not just putting on a happy face.
Authenticity over performative happiness. That's a powerful takeaway. We've covered so much ground today navigating the complexities of C-PTSD, those 4F survival types, the layers of healing from the critic to the body to relationships. This dive into Pete Walker's work really illuminates that path from just surviving to truly thriving. It's not easy, clearly, but it holds the promise of a much richer, more real, more connected life.
Absolutely. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you listening right now. If CPTSD often stems from that deep childhood wound of not feeling safe, loved, or like you belonged, and if relational healing is so key, what's one small intentional step you could take this week? Maybe to offer someone else a moment of deeper acceptance, or perhaps to receive it from a trusted friend, a pet, even the words in a book. Just one small step towards nurturing that fundamental human need for belonging within yourself or for someone else.